It felt like I was a new organ being implanted into a body that did not want me there. So it wasn't just about fixing the operation, it was also a lot of influencing, negotiating and coaching, even with my team.
Is that supply chain sits at the center. It's sort of like the nervous system of the entire company. In order to be successful, you are not just connecting with each of the other functions and groups, you almost become the integrator of multiple groups.
Is especially in supply chain, 90% of the time that supply chain teams are spending on three activities, which is searching for relevant information across multiple siloed systems.
In the world of AI and agentic AI, there is a slight twist that's happening, which you will love. You may need to still have some understanding of the as is, but you don't have to be so precise about the future.
One of the very exciting things about AI is really, can we actually decouple or really unencumber the team to sort of not spend 90% of their time in keeping the lights on?
Well, AI is becoming really exponential, and yesterday AI is different than tomorrow's AI. So not investing in AI will actually potentially jeopardize the survival of an organization.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Change Agents. Our guest today is Samia. She is a global supply chain leader with extensive experiences at Legrand, Schneider Electric, ArcelorMittal, Grupo Antolin, and other multinational organizations. Over the last decade, she has built strong operational foundations. She has implemented global standards, driven large scale process optimizations. From her early days as a supply chain firefighter to shaping future ready organizations, Samia blends deep operational expertise with a forward looking view and technology adoption. She is passionate about empowering people, defining quality processes, and ensuring the right capacity and products are delivered at the right time every time. She's recently taken a new role at Legrand. She's the head of sourcing and supply chain for their audio video divisions. So, welcome, Samia. And we also have Nitin Jayakrishnan is the founder CEO, which is doing amazingly well and impacting a lot of good customers. So, Nitin, we would love to hear from you as well in this podcast. So, Samia, this is amazing. This is interesting. You and I met, and you have a very multinational, multicultural background, and there are so few women in manufacturing, so few women in operations. So I'm thrilled to have you here. So I will, why don't you start? You've been in this space, you've been in different companies, multiple decades, different roles. I looked at your profile. You ran logistics, you ran operations, you ran transformation programs, you fixed SAP challenges, you trained people. Just quite a breadth of experiences and quite a breadth of knowledge in different industries as well. So tell us about you. Tell us about your journey.
So thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. And really, my journey started back in the UK. French born, I spent many years in the UK, and all out of my MBA, I started to look for a role. The job search was quite, I have to admit, challenging because I didn't have experience, and trying to get interview was, almost impossible until I got a job at ArcelorMittal. And really, I fell into supply chain by accident, looking for a job. I got this opportunity, and I was responsible back then as a back office for the supply chain of the steel coil for big account. My account was Ford, Jaguar Land Rover. And I have to say that my journey didn't start, as a paradise. It was actually a nightmare because it was really difficult to really understand how to apply my learning in the education to the job. But I've learned so much in terms of, resilience, teamwork. My team, I think one of the things that thinking back of that experience really helped me to achieve and to be the leader that I am today is really the support that I receive, people that stay behind to try to help me and to try to understand, what needs to be done. And then it became a passion. exciting and always dynamic. The days were never the same, and really helped me to look at, what I was doing more in terms of solving problems, trying to be innovative in the way that we do things and driving transformation. Always in the back of my mind of having the customer voice and understanding how I could meet the customer.
Superb. And tell us about this firefighter spirit. You have this fighter spirit. So tell us about the firefighter. You called yourself one. So what
Yeah.
is that? It's big fires, small fires, everything in between. And then do you also build up after the fire like a phoenix bird?
I think I've earned that nickname. And I it myself, naming myself as a firefighter because I really looked at, what happened in my career. And I describe myself as a firefighter because I was parachuted to a lot of situations by my lead to actually help operation that was just started, a new plant, new line, new project, or actually operation that was not meeting the financial requirements. Most of the challenges I had to face were mainly lack of capacity, lack of quality requirement set up in our operation, customers that were really dissatisfied and inability to deliver. So if I were to give you an experience, and really one of the experience that really struck me and stayed with me for many years. So I was in England, but then I was called to move to a small site in France. So I think one of the reasons I was requested to go is because of the language as well. And the reason for me going there, the plant was not able to produce. But unfortunately, over the years, we had overbuilt the requirement of this plant, becoming 50% of the requirement for Europe. So failing to meet the customer demand, we could actually stop all operation building cars in Europe. So I was sent there to really look at the operation, going back to the foundation, understand how the team is working. Do we have the right people in the right seat? Do we need additional training? What were our digital requirements? So I had to make a diagnosis really quickly of what were our needs. It felt like I was a new organ being implanted into a body that did not want me there. So it wasn't just about fixing the operation. It was also a lot of influencing, negotiating, and coaching, even with my team, because most of my team were there for many years. And I think where I was able to turn things really quickly is that I realized that some of my team members would spend 5 hours weekly to manually input data into SAP for the customer forecast. Seems that they were doing it only when they had time to do it. So obviously in supply chain, if you are working on outdated forecast, you are unable to look at, the right inventory, ordering the right component, looking at potential shortage. So we were always firefighting, always trying to find where we had. I partner with IT and we develop a system for where the Excel file that we receive from our partner were actually uploaded automatically into SAP. So a 5-hour work became a 20-minute uploading. By doing that, I actually gain credibility, believe it or not, that, okay, she knows what she's talking about. I was not just there to make a change, but I was there to empower them and listen to my team members. So I think that's where really helped me to change, the view that my team had on me. So I use always this example of firefighting, and I have a lot more, but I feel like this is the one that I'm really proud of, that myself had learned that being a firefighter means that I needed to listen more and gaining trust by action.
Oh, wonderful. That's a fantastic story. I'm seeing you are dropped, catapulted into this plant in France, supplying 50% of capacity for all of Europe. They themselves have forecast problems because they just haven't had the time to put in 5 hours worth of data entry. And then a myriad of challenges that you took in, you had analyzed those, and then you said, okay, we got to fix that as a priority. And then you took the action. So that's a great story. Samia, take us to the other end. What is something that you're very proud of that may or may not be a firefighting situation? Something that was transformational, something that challenged you, something that really impacted impacted an outcome for your company. You delivered a result that was crucial for revenue or margin or an important customer. So give us an example.
Oh, wow. There are many examples. So let
Okay.
me think. But I think one of the biggest transformation that I have led that I was really proud of is the fact that I turned around the vision and trying to build a stronger partnership end to end. By that, I mean that we were looking at trying to improve the customer experience with some of my customers. So we were doing a lot of projects internally, but believe it or not, we never actually tried to share those projects with our customer. And I'm going to give you an example. We had a high level of peak in our warehousing. And we could see that the demand was going to increase. So we were looking at solution, highly automated solution like goods to person. But we started baby step, right? We go manual, then we went into a peak module, and then we were looking at a fully automated warehouse. But I felt that while I was doing that to answer the problem of growth and capacity, I was not sharing enough with my partner, that is either on the upstream with my supplier, because they could impact the use of this technology, but as well with my customer. So we did a full end-to-end review when we brought customer and partner within our site and explaining, okay, this is where we are and this is what we are trying to achieve. And sometimes we have so much on a PPT, right? But when people comes to site, see it, visualize it, they have another idea of where we are trying to go. And I can tell you some of the customers were still not happy of some of our deliveries, right? Because we had some issues still, right? Nothing is bulletproof and we were not there yet, right? So I tried to turn things around and to really ask the customer to say, okay, please don't measure me by my last delivery. Look at what we are able to do or where we are going. So taking the customer through this transformation enabled us to really look at the fact that the customer was going through the same challenges, right? So we could actually help each other. And on the side of the supplier and my partners on the upstream, I was really looking for them to help me get better in what I was doing. So we were really looking at a full end-to-end, and I was really pleased to turn a little bit around this vision of not just trying to do things on your own in silos, trying to, I don't know, some organization may be scared to share their transformation journey, and I was not one of those leaders. So, and I can tell you the feedback from the customer was amazing. The feedback from my partner was amazing. And we really look at really consolidating and strengthening our partnership end to end.
That was going to be one of my questions, is that supply chain sits at the center. It's sort of like the nervous system of the entire company. So therefore, in a way, you are forced to work. You have to, in order to be successful, you are not just connecting with each of the other functions and groups. You almost become the integrator of multiple groups,
Exactly.
right? And then in these cases, and then I'm also thinking you probably deal with, you're seeing a lot of the data challenges, process challenges. So give us an example that, because this is one of your specialties, right? So you do global process assessments, standardizations. You gave us the example of the forecasting process. So tell us about process and your views and maybe some examples from your transformation life.
So you mentioned data, right? And I think every single project that I have led in any organization, right? And it's not, I don't think it's proper to an organization or to an industry. The first things that people will tell you is that our master data is not correct. So we cannot move. Or it's not as good as what we would want to be for us to start a bigger integration, right? And my stake on that is we need to start somewhere, I rather start doing something, even though I'm 60% correct, that waiting for it to be 100%. And the chances is that you lose your time in the train, right? The train is passing and some other competitor are already 2 steps ahead. So I'm always trying to bring to light that it is important to have processes end to end. We understand that start with the assumption that we know there will be some some issues with the assumption that we take in terms of master data, and we bake that into any transformation. And my philosophy is really focusing on investing a lot on people that help us to bring this data accuracy up to the acceptable level than trying to slow down the project. Just an example. During COVID, I was in my automotive time. Just before COVID, went through a consulting overview with one of the big consulting groups that help us look at our processes end to end and look at some gaps and efficiency. Part of this overview came up with the need to rethink our network modeling in terms of transportation and to potentially invest in a TMS. So I was responsible for the launch of a 4PL TMS type of work for North America. At the time, I was directly reporting to our CEO on the project. And like I was mentioning on data, the first few months was just trying to collect data. And I soon realized that we were trying to look for perfection and we were never going to start the project. So we decided to invest in additional resources to bring us to the level that we wanted. We knew that when we launched the 4PL, and the 4PL meant that we were fully integrated end to end. We were releasing supplier demand on a weekly basis or daily basis, depending on the supplier. Then we were able to send transport order to our transport network to be able to collect the goods and have a fully automated system, but also having a platform when we have the visibility. So you can imagine that accuracy was really paramount, right? So we ended up at some point, so we launched the project at about, I would say, 75% accuracy. And the first few weeks of the project were really about cleaning data. So there was an example that an order was sent to the transport to collect 40 tons of goods because someone has actually left in the master data X amount of pounds, but instead of 1,000 units, they left it as 1 unit. So when you launch an order, it looks like we were looking at ordering 40 tons of goods, right? Which was not true. But until we were going through this pain point, we were not able to really fully optimize the system. It took us about 6 to 9 months to get to that level. But then after that, it was really exponential, the saving that we were able to make in terms of transportation optimization, in terms of mode conversion, as well as saving in inventory that sometimes we realized that the inventory was not needed. So we were able to actually cancel the order. So altogether made it really quite an exceptional project that we launched. But at the beginning, when you look at it, I was not on the mindset of let's fail and fail fast and learn from it. I would say the project would have never seen the light.
Fantastic example again. Very pragmatic. I'm sensing very pragmatic. Perfection is the enemy of progress. So you've rolled with 75%, but put the effort into proper process mapping and then responded quickly. Responded very quickly. And once again, the same themes of bringing people along, cross-functional teams, keeping the customer informed, communicate. I'll tell you what's happening, Samia, in the world of AI and agentic AI is there is a slight twist that's happening, which you will love. People like you, the leading thinkers you will love, which is you may need to still have some understanding of the as is, but you don't have to be so precise about the future.
Mhm.
The beauty of Gen AI, and I would like to put Nitin in just a second to speak about this, is the Gen AI approaches, agentic AI approaches, give a fair amount of flexibility for process variations, because the process is also not just as one thing. You can say order management, or you pick an example, forecast, demand planning is one approach of doing that. But then within that, there are so many variations. Like you said, unit of measure. The US is the only place where you don't use the metric unit of measure, right? So you can pretty much configure the rest of the world. This is like a big topic in most global companies. And so there is slight variations, maybe even major variations, and the agentic AI capabilities are adapting. And then also it's much more easier to bring in new variations as your business models evolve, as you introduce different categories of product select different suppliers. Maybe you want to make some changes. So that's one. Likewise, on the data quality, I mean, we've all invested tens of millions of dollars and then never got to really a beautiful point of data quality. The agentic AI and the large language models have capabilities in which they provide the ability to quickly read data, understand the variances, use public data, maybe the intelligence within the LLM itself, and together that you get to a much better data quality much sooner. So why don't you, Nitin, the freehand product does all of this. So how about you share some of your views and thoughts?
As Samia, you were talking about your experience, one thing that really stood out to me was, you've sort of been at this intersection of Europe, America, and Asia in what was probably the most tumultuous, like 15, 18 years, for those three geographies to be working together in a role that is probably at the center of that fire, which is supply chain. I think just sort of, it's 2005 through 2025, being a European working in supply chain for European companies with global supply chains selling into the US is probably like the definition of a fire. And really, I think especially even the specific geographies there. I mean, UK, France, Spain, and we were just talking about your sourcing in India, Asia, China, and your sort of trans-continental sort of journey between Europe and the US. I think it's crazy just how much of these sort of tactical fires are really just like a microcosm of that macro fire, which you were dealing with probably inadvertently as you got into your career. One thing, just because I'm happy to talk freehand, but one thing I was curious about is, you spoke about some of these wins and, from a transformation perspective, from a technology perspective, like what were things that, there is the positive side of, people enabling success, but what were things that, were limitations, just especially working in like a cross-continental, transnational sense? If you had the right people at the right time, if people or productivity was not a variable that was in consideration, you could have done more, you could have been more, and you could have solved some of these problems. Like, what was the negative side of it? What was something that you wish you could have done at that time?
There's a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
So the thing is, I think it's in the book Good to Great. I can't remember the author, but there is one passage that says, I will never stop to try to be relevant to the role that I am in, right?
Yeah,
So I'm always trying to, I think it's something like that, right?
Yeah.
I think I have early in my career, right? I was, like I said, the firefighter, because I could go into site and execute and turn things around really quickly. And I learned that by doing that, sometimes I did not involve the team the way I should have, right? Sometimes it was more directive, let's do this, right? Because that's the way I know it's going to work, and not really bringing, different point of view, right? So I was an expert in one area, but I didn't know how to lead, right? I learned how to lead, to get people around. And I feel like today my biggest learning is how do you get everyone, around the table, have them a space for them to share their fear, to share what they see things going. And what I tend to do when I am in a meeting is I tend to speak last, because if as a leader, I come up and I have a full agenda, usually I have a full agenda, what is the probability for people to come out of this agenda? So then it becomes only my agenda, and those are the things I want to hear. So soon enough, I moved that to be the last one to speak. So this way, there was not this pressure as being the leader for people not to be able to open up on certain things. And sometimes you have only 1 hour. I changed. So being mindful, I have decided a few years back to change the meeting of 50 minutes or 25 minutes if it's 30, to allow the 5 minutes, because I think we are overdoing meetings today and you never have time to even take a glass of water. So I'm trying to be mindful of that. And I think my team has realized, and I will always say to my team, I want to hear it from you first, because I am here to support you. I am not the leader that's going to be doing. I'm helping. But don't get me wrong, I can roll up my sleeve and get my hands dirty when need be. But I want my team to be able to feel that they are safe, they can grow, that can take decision, that will be trusted. So I think that's where I would say that's my biggest learning within my career as a leader.
Yeah, I'm sensing a lot of listening before talking. I think that's sort of been a common thing you've said through the last few answers. I think back to Suja's question, this whole people first sort of view of processes, people first view of getting things done. I think with AI, what we are seeing is there's always been this like tussle between productivity and organizational goals, if you will, right? And in general, we want the right people at the right place, doing the right things at the right scale and pace to sort of deliver organizational outcomes. I think with AI, what if, and the question we keep going back to is, what if you could give, unconstrained capacity, infinite capability in the hand of every one of your team members? What is the kind of team you would build? What is the kind of organization you will build? What's the kind of brand you will build? And what's the impact on your customers eventually? And I think we're sort of at that time and space right now. Luckily, I think technology now is in very credible, very real terms allowing for it. And I love sort of some of the examples that you were talking about in terms of transformation, because they were very like, they could be perceived as very, tactical in sort of the shifts that you were making, but only as operation leaders would understand it's in those tactics that the real gold is, because the bottleneck is in that Excel sheet going into SAP. That's where shit breaks loose. That's where organizations crumble. And so one of the very exciting things about AI is really, can we actually decouple or really like unencumber the team to sort of not spend 90% of their time in keeping the lights on, and instead spend their time on strategic, more transformational topics of both thinking and execution. And we keep saying this, the real gold is in the pennies, not the pounds, and the very, very tactical interventions that people just end up taking for granted that, it's just the necessary evil that I need to deal with in terms of my job itself. I think 3 or 4 sort of broad themes around that. One is, I think, in the past, data in that is garbage is always meant, garbage out. And I think a lot of time and effort continues to be spent, how do you fix data gaps? How do you ensure data discipline? How do you ensure sort of data is effectively managed? And oftentimes, it's the master data that is a challenge, etc. But reality is business is continuing to exist. I mean, the wheels are turning. And I think one of the ways in which AI has been transformational is just connecting the transactional data to the master data in a way that this is a more living, breathing organism rather than having data decay in a way that you fix it once and then it's sort of, is left to sort of continue, decaying over time. Small things like, for example, every organization struggles with weights and dims on their packaging, right? And that has implications on planning. It has implications on sourcing. It has implications on transportation across the board. But the reality is, like FedEx, DHL, UPS, or Kuehne+Nagel, whoever else, is continuing to measure your packages before they're delivered and charging you for that weight. And so is there a way for us to, in a more dynamic sense, connect your master data to your transaction data so that you can glean what the real data is rather than having to like fix it once and wait for it to decay, fix it again, etc. So more dynamic living solutions rather than point in time interventions, so that you fix it once and it continues sort of living and breathing. So that's one thing that came to mind. The second is actually, in terms of just process and productivity, a lot of things that, supply chain teams, whether in procurement, supplier management, planning and execution, transportation management, the entire spectrum. A lot of times, if you break down, we would generally do something called an X-ray, where we would say, okay, let's take a particular team and actually break down exactly what they're doing, morning to evening, Monday to Friday through the year, and actually understand which are the topics that are actually accretive to the P&L and which are things that we just need to do to keep the business running, and which are things that actually we shouldn't be doing. Oftentimes, there are aspects of the job that go unnoticed, unmonitored, monitored, etc. And then also a lot of times, and especially in your supply management role, I'm sure you've seen this. A lot of times there are aspects of the role, especially with regards to data, where we should be dependent on ourselves, but we're dependent on the supplier. And so we depend on the supplier to tell us how much we're purchasing, or supplier to tell us what the weights and dims are, or etc. So this start, stop, and pause, or reflect sort of view of that X-ray, I think is very helpful, because AI now is able to sort of do specific interventions to sort of say, look, I mean, here are aspects of the job that we need to continue, but is actually impacting productivity adversely. And can we just automate parts of that? So, for example, I mean, because of the time and effort that it takes, a lot of companies end up not sourcing more frequently and instead source more strategically, for long-term contracts, and, don't go out to market to source more frequently. With AI now, you can run bids more frequently, source for new vendors more frequently, and run these strategic sort of procurement events on a potentially a more dynamic basis, for example, right? And oftentimes we don't pause to sort of do that because of the amount of effort and time it takes to execute it. But can you essentially automate it to the point where the human or the team in the loop is essentially just setting guardrails and managing the process while the execution is being done by AI agents? That's the second. And the last thing I'll say is, I think really from the perspective of in the last 20 years we've been coached on manage by exception, right? And management by exception always meant you standardize the process, you try to automate the process, and then anything that falls into exceptions, which ideally is that Pareto of 80% gets automated, 20% is what I'm focusing on. You focus on that 20% to sort of, and that's where most of the managers spend their time. In reality, in supply chain, it's 20% that gets automated and it's 80% that's a fire. And you're constantly, the exception is the 80%. And therefore, you sort of have these large teams, whether it's in market, whether it's in your GCC in Poland or India or Mexico, or it's outsourced to a third party, 4PL or 3PL or whatever it is, who's essentially throwing people at the problem and managing these exceptions. Call the supplier, find out what's going on. Is the port congested? And what do I do? Etc. Right? And that's sort of the, most of your time. And with AI agents now, so being able to automate the exception, where human intervention is not required for the exception management, but really sort of focusing on driving automation in the exception, where you don't have to standardize the process, where you can work with variable, where a whole varied sort of you take the tribal knowledge and the organizational SOP of, if this happens, what would you do? Then let's get the agent, train the agent to do that, right? And really be able to sort of collaborate with third parties in a way that's more thoughtful, I think is the third thing that sort of came to mind. So I think just across those three, so not being constrained by data, having unlimited sort of capacity, capability, focusing on sort of the tactical items, and then also automating the exception management, I think generally are sort of the 3 or 4 topics that we see transformational leaders like yourself looking at.
Definitely. I found,
Any thoughts, Samia? Do you want to reflect on that?
I was a little bit laughing when you were discussing about the 80-20 because I actually did the same thing when I implemented AI. So and this is because we were going baby step. We didn't know really the full extent of what AI could deliver to us, right? And there is a little bit of worry about AI today, which I'm really amazed, because for me, I'm taking AI as a big opportunity, massive opportunity for us to really, augment people's ability, to deal with data, to understand trends. So we wanted to look at introducing AI, and we did exactly the opposite of what you mentioned, Nitin, a minute ago, is that we went on to say, okay, what is the 80%? So we had a lot of customer claims or customer requests when customer would say, okay, where's my goods? Is my production, did you start production? Can I cancel my order? Whatever. And we were receiving huge amount of those demands, those queries on a day-to-day basis. Our commitment with the customer was to support a response within 8 hours, which at some point for me was quite incredible, because I was like, okay, where does the 8 hours come from? Is it really physically possible for quite complex, situation to actually answer in 8 hours? But when we saw the data, it looks like most of our people were answering data such as, okay, the delivery date will be this, bill of landing is this. So we developed an AI internally within our organization to enable access our different ERP system, which means that 70% of the queries that we were getting that were really simple to answer, that were just things of dates, right, were actually answered automatically by the AI, which was led by reinforcement AI. I'm not specialized in that, but I know a little bit that help us to drive the change. For many months, having the person, the analyst sitting next to the tool to train the AI, to a certain point, we left it for the AI to run. So we were able to remove about 70% of the query that at some point in time, in average, we were answering our customer within 6 hours. Our long-term view was that we will be able to have 100% automated, because at the end of the day, answering those requests were not really we're not added value. We're actually time spent that we needed to spend because that was potentially going to impact the customer experience, right? So let's say that it was not valuable, but a necessity and a requirement to meet our customer expectation. So when we moved to that, I left it at about 70%, but we were looking at a roadmap of having fully 100% automated.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that example. At Pando, what we find is, especially in supply chain, 90% of the time that supply chain teams are spending on 3 activities, which is searching for relevant information across multiple siloed systems,
Correct.
2, analyzing these systems data in a way and taking a decision, and then almost 30% of the time communicating that decision via email or Slack or Teams or phone calls or whatever it is, communicating to the third party, it could be a supplier or a customer, and taking their feedback about that data and feeding it back into that system in turn. So to your point, I mean, classic example is customer support, where you've got multiple ERP systems, the bill of lading, I don't know, like certain BUs have bill of lading somewhere else, certain other BUs have it somewhere else, and you're sort of constantly doing this juggling act of figuring out where that data resides. It's a classic use case of being able to sort of automate a lot of
that. Was going to be one of my questions to you, Samia. So if you were the decision maker and you just make the decision and you're leading the AI transformation initiative, and let's just hypothetically assume that there is someone taking care of change management, people, training, etc. What would be your first 1, 2, 3 use cases? Where would you focus on? You would focus as a supply chain leader. You could go anywhere, right? So you see the end-to-end, everything in between, the layers, the complexity, the integration with customers, your suppliers. What would be some of the top 1, 2, 3 use cases you would select? How would you go about it, and what would those be?
So I think on use cases, today we have all the supply chain are impacted by the geopolitical tension that we are seeing. I think my first use cases will be really looking at my current footprint, where I'm sourcing from, and where is the market going, and where do I have ability to start moving, element from one area to another. Right now, we are facing tariff, we had faced disruption with the port and so on and so forth. And it was always looked at, okay, we are being told there is something happening, and then we have to react to it. I'm really looking at establishing optionality in terms of how you look at your supply chain. So let's say we knew before the new administration was coming to play that tariff will be impacted. I would have liked to see maybe, early this year or even last year, some option and simulation to say, okay, if this really happened, how do we start moving our dots? How do we start looking at where do we get our supply from? Because at the end of the day, we need to be competitive. So if we are affected by the tariff, obviously this tariff will actually be passed on to our customer, and worse, to our consumers. We are consumer at the end of the day, so we are seeing the impact. So my aim would have been to really look at it, and if there is an AI that is available to me, that would be my first use case to say, okay, tell me where is my footprint, where do I sell my product, where do I produce, and let me do some kind of simulation in case this happens.
Yes, precise and bang on, right? And you will do it at a much granular level. It's not just the finished goods, it's all the bill of materials underneath that, the various alternatives. You probably have primary and secondary suppliers, and that is all the location, right? So that's a very algorithmic problem. So and what would be your second use case?
Second use cases will be around sustainability. As much as we look at how efficient our network is really looking at what mode of transport we are using. This is something that I'm really passionate about. about, sustainability
You
and
told
saying,
me,
okay,
yeah.
how can we transform the way we do? How can we be more responsible on everything that we do within our supply chain? And I will always remember a partner that says that the greenest mile is the one that we don't drive. So really looking at how can I really use that in the back of my mind and making sure that the current state of my supply chain is fully optimized and that it's a sustainable supply chain, that I can deliver that to our customer, but also to the society as being a responsible organization.
Very, very wonderful. So, how is the regulatory environment helping or hurting the sustainability topics? I know it was a major focus, it's still a major focus in Europe, but across the world globally, is it just your company's focus and your passion, or is it also still regulatorily driven?
So I have to say, from my personal experience and having worked with different organizations, there was a bit of both, right? A bit of, regulation that was enforced, especially in Europe, as you may know. At some point in time, I believe, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, in France, there were requirements from the French government to actually reduce the CO2 emission, and some of the operation needed, because there was a certain quota per cities that we were allowed to actually generate, use, the electricity, because the grid is not really set up for the demand. On the other hand, I believe for certain organizations that I work for was really embedded into their DNA. We are really looking at understanding, everything that we do, looking at reducing CO2 emission, as well as launching big program of supporting our suppliers. So one of the organizations I work for was not just about looking at internal requirements, is really supporting our full end-to-end supplier to help us into the journey of a net zero supply chain. And I think we are all consumers of Amazon and buying from Amazon, right? And I just saw lately that they are offering green delivery right now. So you could decide to, okay, do you really want it tonight? Or if you are able to wait 2 days from now, you could gain, I don't know, I think they were offering like something $1.50 that could be used for future purchases. I think more and more the society and the new generation will demand that we are responsible on that side. And I think Amazon is a great example of how they are starting this journey, and to also looking at, it's not just a case that you're going to receive a green delivery, but you're actually getting something from it. So you're going to get a voucher of $1.50 that you could actually purchase in future. And I'm not saying that all organizations will adopt this kind of, action and work, but I think this is where we are going.
I think that's it. Amazon's work, and you can consolidate, right? You can just pick one day and say, just that's your delivery day. So that would be the green mile that isn't driven.
Yeah.
You create more of the green miles because the Amazon truck is in a neighborhood anyway.
I know.
So it becomes a moot point, but I hear your views. Let's change gears back to your leadership. So what is your leadership style? You've been touching on it throughout. You've been building on it in different ways. But what else are you able to share? What else? What have we missed? Tell us more about your leadership. How do you lead a crisis? How do you invest and develop people? You share with us, you listen to people, but how do you invest and develop talent, young people, or people who want to change careers, mid-career, new skills? AI is a new skill to many people. So how do you approach your leadership style, and then what's your philosophies around developing people?
So really my leadership style is really, I believe I will define myself as a visionary that really likes the vision for the future, but I'm also a leader that really helping the team to work at their full potential. Some of them may not like it, I have to say, because there's a little bit of fear factor at the beginning, but the great thing is I have received feedback from the team to say, oh my God, I didn't even know I could do that. And at some point in time, it felt a little bit difficult at the start, but they realized that they were able to actually achieve higher standard, and they would be able to come out of their comfort zone and achieve more. I am a leader that's always promotes fairness and making sure that I can build an environment where people can come to work as themselves. I am a diverse leader, so I feel like during my career I have learned a lot. I have had to go through a lot of challenges, so I'm using those challenges to make sure that I am setting up an inclusive environment for people to be showing up, to be able to have fun, to care for them, the same way that someone will care for my kids at some point in time. I have 3 boys, so every decision that I take is really in the back of my mind looking at, would my kids work in this environment? Would I want my kid to work in that environment? And that's what I'm always thinking and really leading by this value.
And how do you invest? How do you develop?
Uh,
Do you put
you know,
together a development plan? Is it more organic? You evolve them through coaching, daily coaching, and giving them opportunity. There's different methods, right?
Yeah.
So what is the method that works best for you?
So I think it's not really the method that works best for me, but more for the team. So I'm really trying to customize to my team, understanding where they are. And I am an honest leader. So if I feel that there is a gap that is needed to develop, I will invest all my time to help the team to develop. I will support the team to get the right tool and training. What I like to do, I'm really a hands-on leader. So I do like to have a lot of on-site review kind of, if I visit a site that I'm responsible of, it's always on the shop floor, looking, learning, understanding, kind of Kaizen type of work that people can really ask questions, understand the criticality. So it's not just, let's say, learning in the classroom, but it's learning by doing. I'm a fervent believer that we have to balance both. And the reason for that is that I have spent a lot of effort in sending people into different learning, 3 days learning in whatever skill, right? But coming back, what's really difficult to actually translate those learning into actionable, skills within the ground, right? So I'm trying to really balance the classroom learning into the doing within the site. For my sourcing scope is really taking the team to supplier, right? So you learn the skill. How do you now apply this skill into real life example?
Awesome. Awesome. Do you think you and your teams are ready for AI? This human, the people first to human plus model, right? So we all put a lot of focus around people and gave them tools. We looked at technology as a tool for the people to be efficient and people to be productive. Now the human plus is, now let's make sure that this hybrid organization of humans and automated agents, and also in your factory floors and your distribution center floors, those are also getting automated rapidly, right? The robots and the humanoids. So are you ready for this big wave that's coming? And do you think one should wait and watch for these to be perfect? When is the time? Is there a time? Is there a beautiful time to wait for it? Or what are your thoughts?
So I have a passion for AI, first of all, right? So I love digital tool and technology. So when AI came up, I was like, okay, we need to do that. Even though I didn't even know where to start, right? But I have to be conscious and careful that not everyone is at the same level. So I can tell you that some of my team and some of the team that I led prior, there was always some worries and not really clear of what AI will do, right? I don't think we can say we have to be ready. There is no option. AI is there, and we have, as organization, we have to adopt it. In July, I was completing a program in MIT. So I went to MIT for a 2-day immersion on site with 150 other leaders. Most of the subjects that we review were actually AI. And one of the professors came up and actually shared some studies that they are right now on the way, and that actually could demonstrate that even a profitable organization today, if this organization does not invest in AI, and it depends, what's the range of AI that you want to invest in, that within the next 12 years, I believe it was quoted, that this company could actually be going bankrupt because it's exponential. AI is becoming really exponential, and yesterday AI is different than tomorrow's AI. So not investing in AI will actually potentially jeopardize the survival of an organization. So for me, I feel like as a leader, I need to be able to promote that within my team, my organization, to help the team into the journey. I always refer to baby steps, so we don't want to scare people off, but really showing that the AI is here to support us, not to replace us. Of course, there's going to be some displacement on certain low-level job that does not bring, a higher value, but for the higher end value, new job will be created. So it's just really compensating, and balancing the AI. And I was referring to something that was quite interesting. I was reading a book on grit, and it was showing that there were some studies made that in 1950s, and don't quote me on that, I think the average IQ, 73. The average IQ today is around 110. So the humans are developing to be smarter beings. And why I'm referring to this is because really as humans, AI will help us to go to the next level. So potentially 50 years from now, when we look at our average IQ, we'll actually be growing even more than the 110. So I'm always trying to use this kind of metaphor and analogy with my team to really understand that there is no thing to be scared of. I can appreciate that everyone has different emotion, facing AI, but really trying to promote the positive side of AI. Of course, there are always, limitations, but as a leader, I feel like it is important for me to get to that level.
I love that. And just as you were talking about it, people say these things, and it's the zeitgeist now, and it's the trendy thing to say. But the authenticity with which you said that, I think really struck a chord with me. I think, if enough leaders sort of top down, just more than anything, just created an environment where their teams felt more comfortable to experiment. Their teams felt, not scared to experiment. I think, that in itself is enough of an investment to sort of move the needle of progress. So very inspiring. I appreciate it.
And very, you've internalized it, you've thought about it, right? So it's not just specific sentences, but I can really feel the internalization. So the industry needs people like you. So technology or AI is not pushed onto people, but people like you are internalizing and leading it from the top, from the side, from the bottom. And so it's not so much just a random AI tool just dropping in, but rather you're embracing it because you see the value in it. So we are coming closer to the close of the podcast recording. Any last brief comments, Nitin? Very brief. Any comments from you? And then we'll go to you, Samia.
Yeah, hard to go after that. I think just this this balance of AI for people and people for AI, in some sense, where it's really technology and it's like the prediction that the human race is going to now be going to evolve into this blend of AI plus human in some sense, where that is the next generation or the next evolution. I think for that transition to really happen effectively at the workplace, I think it requires this environment where there is a strong push for people for AI and AI for people, and that balance between the two. And I think leaders like Samia at the forefront of that. So very, very inspiring, Samia. Thank you for
I think it's people first will go to human plus, will go to then AI plus human.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know whether we are ready, and then maybe at some point we'll go all AI. I'm not fully, I haven't envisioned that or thought it through yet, but I don't believe you're going from people first to AI first yet. There's an aspect of human first and a step dear change, but well said, Nitin. Samia, last words and we wrap.
So I think for me, human is still going to be at the center of everything that we do, no matter what. That is AI, that is quantum computing that's coming up. So I think it's a sense that we need to test the temperature within each organization. I know that some organizations are trying, but it may be difficult. But I think as a leader, personally, I feel like I am responsible to make sure that we can use this technology to really help the team to develop, to really help the team to go to the next level, and for the organization to stay relevant. There is a lot of competition. The markets are changing so quickly. The cycles cycles of a plan, when I used to do plans, cycle of a plan could last for months or years, right? Now, when I am planning for something, I have to review it every single day. So I think it is
That's
really
right.
important that we realize that at some point in time, us human will become the bottleneck. So we have a choice today to adopt it, to make sure that we can utilize the AI to stay relevant in this world. So I think that will be my closing comment, and I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Samia. That's Samia Kaci, Vice President at Legrand, Nitin Jayakrishnan, Founder CEO at, and I am Suja Chandrasekharan. Thank you for joining us today.